My name is Alara Hayes. For most of my 34 years, I have lived in the rain-kissed city of Port Blossom, a place where the scent of damp earth and evergreen needles is a constant, comforting presence. It's a city that knows how to be quiet, a rhythm I've always understood. My father, Daniel, used to say I was like the Silverwood River that cuts through the heart of our city, calm on the surface, but with a deep, steady current running beneath. He was a carpenter, a man who believed in the integrity of a well-made thing. Our small home, filled with the scent of sawdust and lemon oil, was a testament to his craft. He built the bookshelves that lined our living room walls, the kitchen table where we shared our meals, and the small wooden birdhouse outside my window where generations of wrens raised their young. After my mother left when I was 7, it was just the two of us. He taught me how to find the grain in a piece of wood, how to listen for the story it wanted to tell. He taught me patience, the value of quiet work, and the importance of building a life with a solid foundation. "You can't rush a good thing, Ellie Bell," he'd say, sanding a piece of maple until it was smooth as silk. "You have to respect the material." Perhaps that's why I stayed at Meridian Strategies for as long as I did. For 10 years, I tried to respect the material, to sand down the rough edges of a place that was fundamentally flawed. As a senior project manager, I was the one who smoothed over client frustrations, who bridged the gap between our brilliant but chaotic creative team and our demanding, results-obsessed leadership. I was, in the words of my father, the problem solver, the one who could make things work when they seemed broken beyond repair. I told myself I was building something, creating order. In reality, I was just propping up a structure with a rotten core. And the heart of that rot was my director, Evelyn Reed. The day I buried my father, the sky over Port Blossom wept a soft, persistent drizzle. It wasn't a storm, just a quiet, gray sorrow that soaked into the dark soil and clung to the lapels of my coat. I remember the hollow thud of earth hitting the polished wood of his casket, a sound so final it seemed to fracture the air around me. Each handful of dirt, offered by friends and family, was a period at the end of a beautiful sentence. My own hands were trembling so badly that my cousin had to steady my arm. My chest was a cavern of ache, a physical hollowness where his laughter used to echo. For hours later, I was standing in the doorway of Evelyn's office, the funeral program still tucked inside my handbag. Its cover was a photograph of Dad and me on the coast, the wind whipping our hair, his arms slung around my shoulder. His eyes, crinkling at the corners, were full of a light that had now been extinguished forever. "I just need a moment, Evelyn. Please," I whispered. My voice was raw, a stranger's voice. The mascara I'd carefully applied that morning was a faint, gray stain beneath my eyes. Evelyn didn't look up from her dual monitors, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a staccato rhythm that grated on my raw nerves. "A moment doesn't secure a multi-million-dollar contract, Ilara. Grief doesn't meet quarterly projections." Her office was a pristine glass box overlooking the city, a stark, minimalist space of chrome and white leather. It was a reflection of her, polished, cold, and offering no comfortable place to land. "I haven't slept in nearly a week," I said, the words barely audible. I had been by his bedside, holding his hand as his breathing grew shallow, my laptop open on the hospital tray table next to him as I answered work emails. Evelyn had known. She had approved my remote work request with a clipped email that read, "Ensure all deliverables remain on schedule." She finally swiveled in her ergonomic chair, her perfectly tailored blazer unwrinkled, her gaze sharp and devoid of sympathy. "Neither have I. I was up until 2 a.m. refining the Lumina Innovations pitch. The pitch you were supposed to be finalizing before. Your personal situation took precedence. Their executive team is flying in tomorrow. $7 million are on the line, Alara. But by all means, tell me more about your exhaustion." A cold wave washed over me, chilling me more than the afternoon's rain. The world narrowed to the space between us, to the chasm that separated her world of numbers and deadlines from my world of loss and memory. I wiped a stray tear from my cheek with the back of my hand. "Of course," I said, my voice flat with a resignation that felt ancient. "I'll get back to my desk." I turned and walked back to my own small cubicle in the open-plan office, the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of keyboards a surreal soundtrack to the symphony of pain in my heart. I sat down, the fabric of the black dress I'd worn to the funeral feeling tight and suffocating. And in that moment, sitting under the sterile lights of Meridian Strategies, With the scent of lilies from the funeral still faintly clinging to my clothes, I made a decision. It wasn't a loud, angry choice. It was a quiet click, like a lock finding its key. It was the moment I realized that some things are not meant to be fixed. Some structures are meant to be torn down. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to say thank you for being here, for listening to this. When I started sharing this story online, I never imagined it would reach so many people. Knowing there are others out there who understand, who have perhaps faced their own Evelyns or their own breaking points, it helps. It truly does. So, if you don't mind, I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from. It makes this big world feel a little smaller, a little kinder. My father's illness had been a thief in the night. Lung cancer, they'd said. Aggressive. They gave him a year, but the disease was impatient, and he was gone in 6 months. Those 6 months were a blur of hospital corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear, of hushed conversations with doctors whose faces were masks of professional compassion, and of long nights spent trying to balance the demands of my job with the sacred, gut-wrenching duty of watching my father die. Evelyn's response to my request for flexibility had been a masterclass in corporate cruelty. "We all have personal lives, Alara," she'd said during a video call, her smile a thin, sharp line. "I didn't become a director at this firm by letting family drama interfere with my professional obligations." Her professional obligations had propelled her to this office, to a salary I could only imagine, and a wardrobe of designer clothes so immaculate they seemed to repel human touch. She was a legend at the firm, known for landing massive clients and for having a staff turnover rate in her department that was 3 times the company average. But she delivered results, and in the world of Meridian strategies, results were the only currency that mattered. The day after the funeral, the day of the Big Lumina pitch, I was back in the office. Evelyn kept me there until well past midnight. We were in the main conference room, the city lights of Port Blossom twinkling like a distant, indifferent galaxy. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts from my aunt and cousins who were still in town. "Where are you, honey? Are you okay? We're all here at the house if you want to come by." I silenced it, the guilt a hot stone in my stomach. "The narrative arc on these slides is weak," Evelyn would say, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the screen. "This font choice lacks authority. The color palette feels passive." She would send me back to my desk to make changes, her critiques maddeningly vague, a power play disguised as perfectionism. At nearly 1 in the morning, she finally stood, stretching with the languid satisfaction of a predator after a successful hunt. "All right. I believe it's ready. You can head home now." I stared at her, my eyes grainy and burning from exhaustion and the tears I refused to shed in front of her. "The pitch is at 9 a.m., she continued, packing her sleek leather briefcase. She didn't look at me. "I'll expect you here by 7:30 for a final run-through." "And Alara," she paused, her eyes flicking over my simple black dress, "for heaven's sake, wear something that conveys success tomorrow. You look like you're attending a wake." The cruelty of the comment was so precise, so surgical, that I couldn't even flinch. I just felt a profound and sudden stillness. After she swept out of the office, I remained in my chair in the darkened conference room. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the building's life support systems. After a while, Matteo, one of the night janitors, quietly entered the room. He was a kind man with sad eyes who had lost his wife to a sudden illness the year before. He didn't say a word. He just placed a steaming paper cup of coffee from the break room on the table beside me, gave me a small, understanding nod, and continued his work. That small act of human kindness was the spark. As I wrapped my cold hands around the warm cup, a memory surfaced, sharp and clear. 2 months earlier, just before Dad's health had taken its final, steep decline, I had been tasked with setting up the secure virtual data room for the Lumina Innovations pitch. It was a digital vault where we would upload all our proprietary research, strategy documents, and the presentation itself. I had created the master administrator credentials, the single key that could control all permissions, add or revoke access, and upload or delete any file. Standard protocol was to immediately share these credentials with the department head and one other senior team member. But on that day, the hospital had called. Dad had fallen. I had set up the data room in a frantic haze, my mind 1,000 miles away. I'd emailed Evelyn and my colleague, Ben, their individual, lower-level access credentials, But in the chaos that followed, I had completely forgotten to send them the administrator password. And they had never asked. They could access the files they needed, so they never realized they didn't hold the master key. Only I did. Only I had that power. I took a slow sip of the coffee. It was bitter, but it was warm. A plan began to form in the quiet, grieving corners of my mind. It was not a plan for revenge, not at first. It was a plan for truth. Lumina Innovations, our most coveted potential client, was famous in the business world. Its CEO, Anya Sharma, had built a global tech empire on a foundation of radical empathy. Lumina was renowned for its employee-first culture, its generous family leave policies, its commitment to mental health, and its fierce belief that a happy, respected workforce was a productive and innovative one. They had been on the cover of business journals not for their profit margins, but for their humanity. Their values were the polar opposite of the reality at Meridian Strategies. The reality of Evelyn Reed. What if Anya Sharma knew the kind of company she was about to partner with? What if she could see the cracked and crumbling foundation beneath our polished facade? I walked back to my desk, my movements slow and deliberate. I powered on my laptop, the screen illuminating my tired face. I navigated to the secure data room and logged in with the administrator password. And then, with a strange sense of calm, I began to build something new. I didn't touch the pitch deck or any of the official research documents. I was not a saboteur. I was a truth teller. I created a new folder. I labeled it, Addendum, Meridian Corporate Culture and Employee Relations, Confidential. Inside, I uploaded a single, carefully compiled document. It was a quiet testament to the firm's hypocrisy. It contained screenshots of emails, Evelyn denying a colleague's request to attend his child's school play because we're on a deadline, her reprimand of our graphic designer for taking a sick day for a migraine, asking for a doctor's note for a headache. It included the department's alarming turnover statistics, data I knew was intentionally kept out of client-facing reports. It included an anonymized account from a former assistant who had quit after suffering a panic attack due to the relentless pressure. And at the end, I told my own story. I wrote about juggling my father's final months with Evelyn's unyielding demands. I included a scan of the funeral program, its edges now slightly crumpled from being in my purse. And I included the time-stamped emails from that very day, from my pleas for a moment of grace to her callous dismissal. I set the permissions on the folder. It would become visible to all users with access to the data room, including the Lumina Innovations team, at exactly 9:20 a.m. 20 minutes into our presentation, right when Evelyn would be hitting her crescendo, waxing lyrical about how, at Meridian, we believe our people are our greatest asset, and our synergistic values will create a seamless partnership with Lumina. Then, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I went home. And I slept. I arrived at the office at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, as commanded. I had showered, changed into a simple but professional navy blue dress, and drank 2 cups of strong coffee. I felt hollowed out, but strangely calm. Evelyn was already in the conference room, pacing like a caged panther, her heels clicking an aggressive tattoo on the polished concrete floor. "There you are," she said, not as a greeting, but as an accusation. "I've reordered the slides. I'll open with the market overview, then you'll walk them through the creative concepts, slides 5 through 40. Then we'll handle the budget and timeline, and I'll close." I stared at her, my composure faltering for a moment. This was a complete reversal. The plan had been for me to sit silently at the side table, advancing the slides while she and Ben did all the talking. She was putting me, the person she considered a liability, front and center. "You want me to present the creative?" I asked, my voice betraying my confusion. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Consider it a final test. Unless you'd rather I just start the paperwork for your termination package today instead of next week." The air in my lungs turned to ice. "What?" Evelyn sighed, a sound of profound theatricality, as if my shock was an immense personal inconvenience. "Don't be naive, Alara. Your focus has been compromised for months. These personal challenges have clearly impacted your performance." She ran a hand over a stack of pristine folders on the table. "I have been meticulously documenting everything. Once we land this account, the partners and I have agreed that we need to restructure the team for maximum efficiency." She offered a smile that was all teeth. "It's not personal. It's just business." She was going to fire me. After 10 years. After I had given my nights, my weekends, my emotional energy to this company. After I had worked through my father's illness, through his death, through his funeral. After last night, a strange calm descended over me again. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet, cold clarity. I understand, I said, my voice even. Good, she said, turning her attention back to the screen. Now let's get ready. We need to project an image of absolute unity and confidence. She dismissed me with a wave of her hand. I walked to my desk and sank into my chair. My plans suddenly felt reckless, like a child's tantrum. This wouldn't just detonate Evelyn's career, it would be a bomb in the heart of the company. It would jeopardize the entire deal, affecting dozens of people like Mateo and Maya in accounting and Ben, who had a new baby at home. They all needed their jobs. My hand hovered over my mouse. I could still log in. I could still delete the folder. I could undo it all. Just then, my personal phone, sitting on the desk, buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Alara, this is Anya Sharma. I received your number from your email signature on one of the preliminary documents. My flight was slightly delayed this morning, and I'm running a few minutes behind. Would it be possible to push our meeting to 9:30? Also, I had a chance to review the materials in the data room last night. Very thorough. I was particularly struck by the addendum. Looking forward to our discussion. She had already seen it. She had seen everything. My hands began to shake, but this time, it wasn't from grief or fear. It was from a terrifying, exhilarating surge of adrenaline. What had I done? At precisely 9:30 a.m., Anya Sharma entered our conference room, followed by two of her executive team. She was a petite woman with kind, intelligent eyes, her dark hair streaked with elegant threads of silver. She radiated a quiet confidence that made Evelyn's aggressive posture seem brittle and loud. Evelyn was instantly transformed, her face arranged into a mask of warm, welcoming professionalism. Anya, it is an absolute delight to finally meet you in person. We are so incredibly excited to walk you through our vision for Lumina's future. Anya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. It's a pleasure to be here, Evelyn. Before we dive in, however, I'd like to address something. My team and I were reviewing the materials in your data room late last night, and we came across a folder that contained some troubling information regarding your internal company culture. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Evelyn's professional smile froze, cracking at the edges. I'm not sure what you're referring to, she said, her voice a little too tight. Anya picked up her tablet from the table and turned it to face us. On the screen was my document, open to the page with the screenshot of Evelyn's email to me on the day of my father's funeral. Grief doesn't meet quarterly projections. Perhaps you could elaborate on this philosophy of employee management? Anya asked. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes were like steel. And in that moment, the pristine glass box of Evelyn's world shattered. Her face went from a controlled porcelain white to a blotchy, furious red. This is a fabrication. An outrageous, libelous attack by a disgruntled employee. Her head whipped around, her eyes locking onto me with venomous realization. You did this. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just met her gaze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Regardless of who compiled this information, Anya said, her calm voice cutting through the tension, is it true? Of course not. Evelyn snapped, her composure completely gone. Alara has been deeply unstable since her father's illness. Her work has been riddled with errors. She's missed critical deadlines. I have the original emails, I said, finding my voice at last. It was quiet, but it was steady. And the company's own HR records will verify the staff turnover rates. You can ask Ben about the time he had to work through his anniversary dinner. Or ask Mateo, from the janitorial staff, who saw me here until 1 a.m. this morning, the day after my father's funeral. Ben, who had been sitting frozen, suddenly looked down at his hands, a silent confirmation. Evelyn turned on him. Don't you dare. Anya Sharma held up a hand, and the room fell silent again. She closed her tablet with a soft, decisive click. I think we have everything we need. At Lumina, our partnerships are built on a foundation of shared values. Trust, integrity, and basic human decency are not negotiable for us. She stood, her team rising with her. It's clear that Meridian's actual practices are fundamentally misaligned with the values you claim to champion. We will be taking our business elsewhere." Evelyn looked as if she might physically combust. "You cannot make a $7 million decision based on the vindictive lies of one failing employee." "I made 3 calls this morning," Anya replied, her voice unwavering. "To 3 of your former employees. They verified everything in this document, and then some." She then turned to me, and her expression softened. "Alara, I am so deeply sorry for your loss. It takes an incredible amount of courage to stand up for what's right, especially during a time of immense personal pain." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the table in front of me. "When you've had time to grieve and you're ready to think about what's next, I would very much like to talk to you. We have a place for people with integrity." And with that, she and her team walked out of the room, taking our biggest potential contract of the decade with them. The silence they left in their wake was deafening, thick with the wreckage of the last 10 minutes. Evelyn slowly turned to face me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "You're finished," she hissed. "You are done in the city. I will personally call every agency head I know. I will make sure you never work in marketing again. Security will escort you out of this building immediately." I should have been terrified. I should have been shaking. But as I looked at her, at this woman who had tried to grind my spirit into dust, all I felt was a profound, liberating sense of peace. The heavy weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. "That's fine," I said, my voice clear and strong as I stood up. My legs were steady. "But before you do that, you should probably know that I am the only person who has the administrator password for the Lumina data room. The one that still contains 10 years of our firm's proprietary research, strategic frameworks, and competitive analysis. All of our intellectual property." Her eyes widened, just a fraction. "I imagine the partners will want to secure that data immediately to prevent any potential leaks now that the deal is dead," I continued, picking up my handbag. "So, you have a choice. You can have security throw me out with nothing, and you can try to explain to the partners how you lost a $7 million account and control of our most sensitive data. Or, you can provide me with a formal separation agreement acknowledging my voluntary resignation, a severance package commensurate with 10 years of service, and a neutral letter of reference." For the first time since I had met her, Evelyn Reed was utterly speechless. Ben cleared his throat nervously. "Evelyn, perhaps we should be reasonable. Alara has been an outstanding member of this team." "You are blackmailing me," she finally spat out, her voice a venomous whisper. "No," I corrected her gently. "I'm negotiating my exit. It's a skill I learned from watching you." Her gaze darted from me to the door, to the empty space where Anya Sharma had stood. The loss of the Lumina account would be a catastrophic failure on her record, likely costing her the partnership she had been relentlessly pursuing. "Give me the password," she seethed through clenched teeth, "and I will consider your terms." I shook my head slowly. "That's not how this works. The signed agreement first." I laid out my terms. 6 months' salary, full health benefits through the end of the year, and a letter confirming I resigned for personal reasons to focus on family matters. That is extortion. That is a standard severance for a senior manager with a decade of exemplary performance reviews, I said calmly. Unless, of course, those reviews in my file aren't as stellar as I've been led to believe. The muscle in her jaw jumped. "Fine," she bit out. "Ben, go to HR. Get the standard agreement. Now." While Ben was gone, Evelyn and I sat in a state of suspended hostility. I could feel the heat of her glare on me, but I kept my eyes fixed on the window, watching the soft port blossom rain begin to fall again, washing the city clean. I could breathe. For the first time in so long, I could actually draw a full, deep breath. "I never would have pegged you for this," she said finally, her voice low and tight. "You were always so compliant. So desperate for a pat on the head." I turned to look at her then, really seeing her for the first time, the rigid posture, the expensive armor of her clothes, the deep-seated unhappiness in her eyes. "That's what made me good at my job," I said softly. "I see what people need. I find solutions." She let out a short, sarcastic bark of a laugh. "And what is it you think I need, Alara?" "A lesson in ethics from a backstabbing subordinate." "A vacation," I said simply. "And maybe a friend." Ben returned with the paperwork. I read every line, my mind sharp and focused. I signed my name with a steady hand, the stroke of the pen a final, definitive act. An ending and a beginning. The password, Evelyn demanded, holding out her hand. I took a small notepad from my purse, wrote down the password, and slid it across the polished table to her. Your worth is your own 24. Her eyes narrowed as she read it. What is this? Some kind of pathetic joke. The system requires a mix of upper and lowercase letters, and at least one number, I said, my face a perfect mask of innocence. It meets all the security parameters. I stood and gathered my things. Good luck with the partners, Evelyn. I'm sure you'll find a way to spin this. As I walked to the door, she called out, her voice laced with a final, desperate threat. They'll never believe you. They'll believe me. I paused with my hand on the doorknob and looked back at her. I don't need them to believe me anymore, I said. And the most startling thing was that I meant it. I walked out of the Meridian Strategies building and into the cleansing rain, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. I looked up at the gray sky, letting the cool drops fall on my face. My father had always told me, your strength isn't in how much you can carry, Ellie Bell. It's in knowing what to set down. I had finally set it down. For 2 weeks, I did nothing but grieve. I slept, I cried, I ordered takeout, and watched old movies my dad had loved. I walked along the banks of the Silverwood River, the place he'd taught me to skip stones. I went through his old boxes, weeping over faded photographs and worn-out flannel shirts that still smelled faintly of him. I gave myself the grace that Evelyn never would have. When I finally felt ready, I called Anya Sharma. We met for coffee in a small, cozy cafe downtown. She didn't grill me about what happened at Meridian. Instead, she asked about my father. She asked about his carpentry, about what I loved, about what I dreamed of if there were no obstacles. We're launching a new division at Lumina, she explained, focused on community impact and building authentic user relationships. It needs a leader with empathy, strategic vision, and a deep understanding of people. She smiled at me over her latte. It needs someone with integrity. The job is yours if you want it. I started at Lumina a month later. The difference was like stepping out of a dark, cramped room into open sunlight. My hours were respected. My ideas were celebrated. My colleagues were collaborative and kind. My work had a purpose beyond profit. I was healing. About 4 months into my new role, I received a text from Maya, my old colleague from Meridian. You are not going to believe this. Evelyn is gone. Fired. I called her immediately. What happened? Maya's voice was giddy with schadenfreude. That password you gave her. Your worth is your own 24. You know how arrogant she is? She started using it for everything. Her new project management software, her expense account portal, even her company email. My breath caught. No. Yes. Apparently, IT was doing a random security audit, and they flagged her account for using a non-generated password across multiple platforms. So they logged in to force a password reset, and they found it all, Alara. The smoking gun. Emails proving she was actively trying to poach 2 of our biggest accounts to take with her to a competitor. She was planning to jump ship all along. I sat down on my sofa, stunned into silence. I had never intended that. My password was a private mantra, a final, quiet act of self-assertion. I never dreamed it would become the key that unlocked her own self-destruction. The partners fired her on the spot. Maya finished. Escorted out by security. No severance. Nothing. Her own hubris did her in. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the evening light fading outside my window. I didn't feel a thrill of victory. I felt a profound sense of closure. The universe had a strange, circular way of balancing the books. Evelyn wasn't defeated by me, she was defeated by her own character. A year has passed. I lead a team at Lumina that I respect and admire. We recently launched a mentorship program for young women in tech that has become a model for the industry. I am building things again, but this time, the foundation is solid. I saw Evelyn once, across a crowded room at an industry conference a few months ago. She was with a small, unknown startup. Her power suit was gone, replaced by something less assuming. She looked smaller, diminished. Our eyes met for a fleeting second. I gave her a small, simple nod, not of forgiveness perhaps, but of acknowledgement. Of moving on. She looked away. The greatest revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. The greatest revenge is healing. It's building a life so beautiful and full of purpose that you forget they ever had the power to cause you pain. It's discovering that your worth was never in their hands to begin with. It was, and always will be, your own. I still go to the riverbank. I still talk to my dad, telling him about my work, my team, my life. And in the quiet moments, when the water flows steadily by, I can almost hear his voice on the wind, gentle and proud. See, Ellie Bell? I told you. You just had to respect the material. And the material I now know was me.